What's going on, you guys? My name is Mo Awesome from Awesome MTB. I just figured I'd take some time and give you guys my feedback on the Fox 36 Grip 2 fork and the Fox Float X2 rear shock that I have been running on my Firebird 2.9. So if you guys have been following us along, we took this bike up to Canada and I freaking put it through the ringer. Really want to test out what the whole bike was about. And I absolutely love that fork, and I'm not so in love with that rear shock. So I just figured I'd take some time, share my thoughts on it. And I also included the Fox Transfer Dropper Post just because I consider it suspension and it's my favorite dropper post. It's made by Fox, so I'm going to put it in the same category. But now we are riding for Worldwide Cyclery, so if you guys want to save yourself some money, use coupon code MOAWESOME10 and you guys will basically get 10% off your entire order over at Worldwide Cyclery, and they also help support the channel with that as well. So thank you guys so much for helping us out, and also thanks to the guys at Worldwide Cyclery for just being all around rad. So let's get after the video. So let's start off with the fork. So for the fork, I'm running the 2019 Fox 36 Factory Grip 2 fork, and it was one of those things where when I first found out I was getting that fork, I wasn't exactly the most excited. It wasn't that I didn't want the fork, it was more so that I knew that I loved Fox 36s, so I knew I was probably going to like the fork. But I was kind of thrown off on the fact that I was going to have the independent high and low speed rebound controls. On rear shocks that I run with the independent high and low speed rebound controls, even though I do feel like it's a cool feature to have, you can feel a difference, I don't necessarily feel like it's the most necessary adjustment. Some riders, that might be the most crucial feature for them. However, in my opinion, on those rear shocks, I kind of like it to be a little bit more of a simpler setup back there, and I kind of had the same feeling for the fork as well. I was completely wrong. I actually love having the ability to tune my rebound independently on the fork as opposed to that rear shock. I feel like on the fork, then I can really set up that initial stroke to be nice and responsive, so to have a little bit of a faster rebound, and then on those bigger hits, I can kind of slow down that rebound a little bit to kind of have a little bit more control to my fork, and that is freaking amazing and really complements being able to tune my compression independently for high and low speed as well. So I feel like the Grip 2 aspect in terms of independent high and low speed rebound and compression control, that definitely was a huge plus for me after really testing this fork out. Now the biggest plus for me on the Fox 36 Grip 2 fork wasn't actually until a month after I had the fork. And for me personally, I'm the type of rider who I go out there every day. I try to ride at least 2 to 3 hours per day, and then some days I'm out there for about 6 to 7, but normally you'll see me on the trails every single day. So I really put my suspension through the ringer, and about that 1 month period is where I start to feel a little bit of a decline performance wise for my forks. They start to feel a little bit stickier, and especially on those older Fox 36 RC2s. I say older, about a year or two ago. But with the RC2s, I felt like as soon as you started noticing that stickiness in the fork, then it was just gonna get worse from there. Now with these Fox 36 Grip 2, the thing that blew me away was when I hit that 1 month period, that's when we started to go up to Canada. So I was a little bit concerned because I didn't have time to service my fork or get it serviced, and it was one of those things where I knew it was gonna start feeling bad just off of previous experiences. When we got up there, what blew me away is that initial stroke suppleness, so that softness in the initial stroke, that didn't just go away. That was actually there for the whole time we were in Canada, which was freaking mind-blowing. Yeah, the fork started to feel a little bit stickier. Like it was still doing its job. It still felt buttery smooth. It still handled that initial stroke super well. I didn't feel kind of that resistance from those seals. And it was just blowing me away in how this fork can almost, it wasn't feeling obviously like day one, but at the same time, it was feeling so much better than previous generation Fox forks at that 3 month mark. And for me, that's pretty mind blowing because like I said, on that Canada trip, we were probably out there on the trails every day for at least 4 to 5 hours, and the conditions up there, it was raining on us, we were riding in the mud, so I was definitely blown away by how that fork kept up its performance, especially as it started getting more towards where I would normally service the fork. Like I said, pretty mind-blowing, especially because other forks I've had in the past, whether they be rock shocks or those older Fox 36 RC2s, that's where that fork wouldn't even make it to that point without feeling like complete sticky mess. So I definitely feel like whatever Fox did internally on those, it feels really good performance-wise. Another thing, the stiffness, it's not that much different from the previous generation, but I just figured I would touch on that just because it is one of the reasons that makes the Fox 36 one of my favorite forks. And the stiffness on the Fox 36 Grip 2 series does not change. It's still amazing. That's why I freaking love this fork. And the reason I'm a Fox guy is I just feel like on these Fox 36s, traction is pretty ridiculous. Like the fork feels like it just sticks to the ground. And it's one of those things where, yeah, they're not the softer, more plush fork. I definitely feel like RockShox has a little bit of a softer, more plush feeling fork. I feel like what I don't get with the RockShox forks that I get with the Fox is that kind of traction sticking to the ground and also that stiffness. So it's one of those things where you're kind of trying to find that sweet spot, and where even though, yeah, the softness of the RockShox is appealing, at the end of the day, I want that front end of the bike to really stick to the ground, and I want that stiffness there, and I feel like that Fox 36 series forks really do me well. And so with the Fox 36 Grip 2 series, I feel like that was kind of answering the things that I needed from my fork, and that was a little bit more reliability in terms of performance. So not that my older Fox 36 RC2s would stop working, it was just I would be able to feel a noticeable shift in performance, especially as I really started to tack on those miles on there, where this Fox 36 Grip 2 definitely holds up a little bit longer, especially as you get closer to those service intervals. So I've been super jazzed on the Fox 36 Grip 2, and that's my take. All right, so now let's talk about the Fox Float X2. So that's the rear shock that I'm running on the Firebird. And so I've been running the DPX2 on previous bikes, and that normally is my go-to shock. I feel like the DPX2 is a little bit poppier, a little bit more playful, and I feel like for me is kind of the ultimate shock. When you go to lock that DPX2 out, I just feel like it's a way stiffer climbing platform, save a little bit of weight, and then at the same time, it's a little simpler overall as well too. So that's why I love the DPX2. However, we were going to Canada. We're going to be spending 2 months up there, so I knew we were going to be doing some huge runs. I put the X2 on there to have a shock that was a little bit more on the downhill side of the spectrum, and it kind of felt the same as the previous X2s I've had. So the last one I ran was about a year ago on my HD4, and I've run it a few times on some other bikes before that, and it's a really good shock. I feel like it might be a little bit more on the overhyped side of the spectrum. I definitely feel like in terms of plushness, it's really plush. It gets the job done. It feels really consistent from the top of your run to the bottom of your run. But I just feel like in terms of servicing, you just have to service those shocks a little bit more often than the other shocks on the market. I just feel like unlike other shocks where you start riding them and they will develop a little bit of stickiness, you still get some really good performance out of those shocks. And especially you could probably go 1 to 2 weeks closer to that service interval and it will still feel pretty rad. Obviously it'll feel a little bit stickier, and then as soon as you do that service interval, the shocks start feeling amazing. With the X2, I feel like that stickiness comes way sooner, and as soon as you get a little bit of stickiness with the X2, I just feel like the performance, it starts to go downhill really fast, no pun intended. But I just kind of feel like Fox needs to do something about prolonging these service intervals a little bit, just because in comparison to that Fox 36 Grip 2, I feel like that X2 needs to be serviced way more frequently. And like I said, that stickiness I feel like affects the X2 more than other shocks on the market. So I'm not saying that Fox needs to design a shock that never needs to be serviced. I'm just saying maybe a little bit more consistent feeling shock as it approaches that service interval. Another thing too, you do have the ability to tune high and low speed, rebound, and compression independently in the X2. And even though I definitely feel like if you really want to make your suspension feel absolutely perfect, like just get it dialed to a dot, I don't really understand the need for it in the rear shock, just because there's so many different variables when you get on the trail, and unless you plan on constantly setting up your suspension based off of where you are, what you're doing that day, and what type of riding you're doing, I just feel like the independent high and low speed compression and rebound just becomes a lot for a shock on the rear. Now, like I said, I'm probably a minority out there. There's probably some people out there that freaking love having the ability to tune that stuff, like I said, just super independently. And I feel like on some bikes, it definitely makes a difference just having the ability to tune the high and low speed compression independently. However, when you start to factor in rebound as well, and it being the rear shock and just different terrain, just so much going on back there, I just feel like it starts to get a little bit complicated. And then when it does come time to service that thing, they are pretty complicated to service. I know some bike shops actually have to just send it back to Fox. Some bike shops can service it. It's just a little bit more time and labor, which results in a higher labor fee. So just something to keep in mind. I feel like the DPX2, like I said, it's poppy, it's playful, it gets the job done on the downhill. If you want something a little bit more downhill oriented, you're really looking for that plush feeling, I would consider that DHX2, that coil shock from Fox. And unfortunately, you can't run it on DW Link bikes like the Pivot Firebird. However, if you have a bike like the Santa Cruz Hightower, I feel like that bike, if you want the downhill performance from it, run that DHX2 on there and it will blow your mind away, because I think it actually makes VPP feel good. And I'm not slamming VPP. Maybe I'll do a whole different video on that. But yeah, that's my feedback on the Fox Float X2. All right, and last but not least, the Fox Transfer Dropper Post. Now, I'm gonna make this one short and sweet. If you are someone out there and you can get away with 150 millimeters of travel on your dropper post, I know some riders need a little bit more, like a 175 or a 200, but if you can do like a 150 or 125 or 100, I would seriously consider getting the Fox Transfer Dropper Post. It has been one of the most reliable dropper posts I have ever owned. I've actually never had an issue with any transfer dropper post I've had, and I've been running them, I want to say, on the last 6 bikes I've owned. And it's actually, I actually need more travel than my dropper posts have, so I run a 150. And if anyone's seen me, I have a really high saddle height and I have a lot of seat posts exposed, so I would actually benefit from a 175 or a 200. However, I've test ridden other ones and they definitely feel really good, but I've also seen those in bike shops a lot more for service or for warranty repair. So I don't feel like any other dropper post out there has presented enough advancement to where I'm just like, okay, it's time to put away this transfer dropper post and go with the different companies. There are some really cool dropper posts out there right now. I know the one-up components have been super rad for people. I want to say it's the Revive dropper post. That one's also been pretty reliable for some people out there. However, for me personally, that transfer has just been so bulletproof, and on top of it, they sell it without the lever, so I can actually get any lever I want. I just feel like that's been the main reason why I keep going with the Fox Transfer Dropper Post. So not saying that it's going to be blowing the competition away. I'm just saying that it's been literally the most reliable bike product I have ever owned. So I'm just going to keep kind of endorsing that one. So that's the Fox Transfer Dropper Post. Well, there you guys have it. That's my feedback on the Fox 36 Grip 2, the Fox Float X2, and the Fox Transfer Dropper Post. What do you guys think? Would you guys run any of this product, or do you guys think there's a better fork or better rear shock? Let me know in the comments section. And like I said, if you want 10% off your entire order from Worldwide Cyclery, just use coupon code MOAWESOME10. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, you guys, ride awesome. You.